Our keynote speaker is ready for his address, but before I welcome him and hand over the mic officially, let me introduce you to our keynote speaker, Mr. R.V. Shahi, former Power Secretary of Government of India, who is currently the Senior Advisor to the World Bank and Chairman of Energy Infratech Private Limited. He has previously served as a Secretary to the Government of India in the Ministry of Power from 2002 to 2007, the longest serving Power Secretary in Indian history. As Chairman and Managing Director, Shahi is known for transforming BSES Limited from a small power utility to one of the largest in the nations. Mr. Shahi was awarded the Best Power Man of Millennium Year 2000 award by National Foundation of Indian Engineers. Other than being on the board of various companies and entities, Shahi sits on the board of governors of Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow, and Institute of Energy Management and Research, Gurgaon. Mr. Shahi is an age-old supporter of private sector-led power sector development in Nepal and has attended almost all major events in Nepal on power sector. Mr. Shahi, it is a great honor to be welcoming you to the Power Summit here. Welcome, sir. The mic and stage audience, all yours.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Honorable Minister for Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, Honorable Pampa Bhushal, Honorable Minister of State, Mr. Umesh Srestha, Mr. Krishna Prasad Acharya, President of IPPAN, the Vice President, Mr. Garg, distinguished speakers at the dais, and distinguished participants to this program. I have the honor of being invited to speak to this August gathering in presence of very distinguished personalities, including the Honorable Minister. And I'm grateful to IPPAN because IPPAN has invited me to speak in almost all the previous IPPAN seminars like this, I think without any exception. And that is for the last many years, I made it a point to respond to the invitation. And so I am here today with you. I have worked for the hydropower development in Nepal in various capacities. Before I became Power Secretary, as Power Secretary, and after I have left the job of Power Secretary, after relinquishing the charge, now as Senior Energy Advisor to the World Bank for South Asia. And that's almost 20 years, almost various aspects of hydropower development, transmission system development. I have been closely associated insofar as Nepal's development is concerned. And for the last many years, almost every month, nowadays, bi-monthly, on virtual basis, I interact with the Energy Secretary, Mr. Karki, and I have been interacting with previous 5-6 Energy Secretaries to deal with various issues that relate to India or that relate to Nepal itself. This conference is very important because it concerns climate, it concerns COVID, and it concerns very much the COP26, which just ended, and in the backdrop of a strong emergence of solar power. So we have these 3 C's, climate, COVID, and the emergence of solar power in a big way, particularly in South Asia and in general in the whole world. All hydro in India have been declared as renewable because they were always renewable. And in Nepal, you have a huge potential. I mean, we have been hearing close to 100,000 megawatt, but experts also say that wherever detailed studies have been done, the previous study saw that the capacity gets doubled. So therefore, it could be as well 200,000 megawatts. So it can be anything between 180 to 200,000 megawatt, the potential of hydropower in Nepal. Let us leave analyzing the past as to why we have been able to do only about 2,000 megawatt. A previous speaker mentioned that we have the capacity of about 1950. But let us leave the analysis of why we are only there, why not larger capacity that was developed in the past. and let us analyze what we do for the future. I compliment the government of Nepal that they have taken a mission that Nepal should have from present less than 1500 megawatt, we should rise to 3000 megawatt and then 5000 megawatt of consumption in coming years. Just now, Mr. Acharya mentioned that we often say we have surplus. In certain region of India, many, many years ago, perhaps a few decades ago, we used to say power is surplus, particularly the Eastern India. But it was not surplus because we had not connected. We didn't have transmission system. We did not have distribution infrastructure. Even if power was available, power cannot be consumed. So power can be consumed only when we have this infrastructure. Right now, for the last 7-8 years, I'm very closely in touch with the NEA and in fact at the level of Secretary Energy. How do we expand the transmission network? Dhalkewar Muzaffarpur transmission system has a capacity of 1000 megawatt, but we operate at about 300. Gradually, we have come to that figure. And that is because what connects Dhalkewar Muzaffarpur transmission system intra-Nepal, within Nepal, 220 kV this way, 220 kV the other way, 400 kV substation, the number of 132 kV substations, 66 and 33 kV substations. Those are the things, once they are connected, then we have the larger consumption. And I think I entirely agree with Mr. Acharya when he said consumption should be increased. Hydropower has to be developed in Nepal. When I was power secretary also I said so, I am saying this now also. First, for the consumption of power in Nepal. Nepal's per capita consumption is close to 300 kilowatt hour, maybe a little bit more or less. We are also only 1200. There are others who are much more. China has something like 3,500, 3,600. So obviously per capita consumption gives an indication of where we are. So therefore it has to be increased. But in spite of all that, if we try to develop the potential that we have in Nepal, obviously there will be surplus. I think some 7-8 years ago, when I used to have seminars in Kathmandu, there would be a group of people and a large group of people who had the view, why should hydropower be developed in Nepal to export to India, to export to others? Today, I think we have discussed this matter time and again. We gave examples of what Bhutan did and how Bhutan economy is transformed. And therefore, that is no longer an issue today. So today, there is a consensus that hydropower should be developed first for consumption of Nepal, and additional power should definitely be exported because water is energy, and that water, if it is not converted into electricity, it goes some way into the sea, and then we lose that energy. So therefore, that consensus today is guiding us that hydropower must be developed. And that is how the Ministry of Energy, the IBN, all the agencies are trying their best. How do we expand the capacity of hydropower? And it is in that context, I must say that today, whether we will be able to export, whether we will be having surplus, whether we will be able to compete, those are the issues. They are issues. If we do not produce power at affordable rates, then we do have an issue. Because sometimes when I used to visit Nepal, and now also I interact every month with various people, including with Energy Secretary very regularly, then there is a view that would there be a problem of exporting power to India and to other countries because cost of hydropower is more. That's an issue. And it is in that context, even in India, we had this issue, and some changes have happened in policy of hydropower development within India itself, like backloading of tariff. Can the tariff be slightly backloaded without anybody losing, so that in the initial years, the tariff is not high and gradually the tariff increases? Like we did that, exactly that formulation, exactly that approach in case of Bhutan. We had a 35-year tariff progressively increasing, and therefore financing was not an issue. Only thing is the consideration and appreciation of this approach has to also be with the bankers. And that should be possible because this is such an important source of energy, renewable source of energy, that today to address the issue of solar expansion, India is planning 500 gigawatt, 500,000 megawatt in next 10, 15 years of solar power. Now, in evenings, the solar power would not be available. India has its own hydropower resource. It is developing pumped storage, but it would need massive amount of hydropower support. So I don't think that should be a great concern in Nepal or in Bhutan, that if we develop hydropower, whether it will be able to be absorbed. I mean, in the power trading policy, cross-border power trade policy that government of India made, and it revised it twice in reference to the concerns made and raised by different constituents. And I am associated with that in the Power Secretary's Roundtable, a platform which was facilitated by the World Bank, and we meet every 6 months. It's an informal platform, and in that several concerns, several perspectives are discussed. And as a result, Government of India thought it proper to revise this cross-border power trade policy twice in the last 3-4 years, to take care of the concerns, to take care of the perspectives, to take care of the objective assessment of situation. And as a result, this has become quite friendly today. It is not that Nepal's power can be exported only to India. Of course, it can be exported to India. It has been exported in the past. It has been imported also in the past. It continues that. It can be exported even to Bangladesh. It can be exported to Sri Lanka when we are able to connect Sri Lanka, and we are trying our best to have transmission interconnection between India and Sri Lanka, and then it should be possible. So this power trade, cross-border trade policy, which has been evolved by India and revised again and again, at least twice or thrice, that takes care of some of these things, and that concern should not be there. But one concern that needs to be addressed is that it is not today a situation that power at any cost. When I dealt with power sector in India, way back in early 80s, we found that people used to say, no power is costlier than power, costly power. So therefore, today you have a choice. I mean, solar power price has gone as low as 2.5, sometimes it is even less than 2.5 rupees per kilowatt hour. It has no doubt the difficulty of not being available in the evening, but options are there. And these options tell us that we need to revisit our policy. In India, we need to revisit our policy, and India is doing. In Nepal also, we need to revisit our policy, that to how the cost of power that is produced is not so high that it does not get accepted in the market. That is the fact. And in that, some of the things like government royalty, free power, free equity, these are the things which go, and then very long delays in construction, issues are not sorted out. I mean, money is spent, progress is waiting, interest during construction of the bank, I mean, by the bank loan, that keeps increasing. These are the things which we have to get into details as to how we should develop these power projects, and at the same time, we bring them, and then backloading of tariff, as I mentioned, we can bring them in the acceptable regime of tariff, so that is not an issue. It is not that at any rate power will be sold. At any rate, power will not be sold even in Nepal. I mean, if you do that, then consumers will have an issue. So I think these are the issues which we have been raising even within India, and there have been some response. And these are the issues which are equally relevant to whether Bhutan or Nepal. Bhutan did come out with a very nice approach of backloading of tariff for next many years, as I mentioned, and that addressed the issue of very costly power in the initial years of hydropower development. I would feel that these are some of the things which we have to look into. You see, I was very closely associated with the power development agreement which was piloted by IPPAN for Upper Karnali and for Arun 3. Arun 3 is being done by one of the very successful public sector hydro company of India under the Ministry of Power. And we found that definitely that process could be a little more smooth, could be expedited. So there is today, and then in the initial stage of infrastructure, land acquisition, forest clearance, and now with how the explosives decision can be taken by the Defense Ministry, how this Kosi highway can be sort of straightened and modernized or strengthened. These are the issues which continue, some of these issues continue. So therefore, these inevitably delay, and these delays costs to the project in terms of interest during construction. So I think these are things where there are lessons today. There are lessons in India on the development of hydro projects. There are lessons in Nepal. It's not that in Nepal it is unique. It is, we have also faced this problem and even continue to face this problem. So I think these are some of the things which we need to take care so that hydropower development in Nepal is made attractive from investment point of view, from power purchase point of view, and from a regulator point. I may also tell you that I am associated with the World Bank on the Power Secretaries Roundtable, and they set up a joint working group of regulators by the SAFIR, South Asia Forum of Indian regulators. And they are working on how we should align the regulatory policies and regulations of different countries to the extent they relate to cross-border power trade in a smooth manner. Already they had 6 meetings. I attended all of them. And on grid code and on market design, substantial progress has been made. I would feel that would go a long way in further smoothening the process of cross-border power trade. And therefore, this fear or this apprehension, if it is there, I am told in certain quarters that apprehension is there, that if Nepal ends up with surplus power, would it be able to sell to India and to other countries? And some of the points I have addressed. And on the regulatory issues, I'm trying to say that a lot of discussion is going on, and they are very fruitful discussion. Another group that Power Secretaries Roundtable created relates to expansion of infrastructure. A presentation was made before the Honorable Minister came, and interconnection with various countries. How do we move on? Because today, if we don't have interconnection and we don't have a regional or a sub-regional transmission grid, then how do we increase the extent of power trade across the countries? And that's a very urgent task. And the joint technical team that has been set up under the aegis of Power Secretaries Roundtable, South Asia Power Secretaries Roundtable, they have done an analysis, and they found short-term, medium-term, and long-term approach. With that, it should be possible. Where the long-term approach is that this capacity would be as high as almost 48,000 megawatt. Today, it may be in the range of 7,000 megawatt, will become 14 to 15,000 megawatt in less than 5 years. And ultimately, this can go up to almost 48,000. So you can imagine that in the South Asia grid, we could have cross-border power trade in that range, maybe less than that, not exactly equal to the transmission capacity. So I think the whole sector is alive to this. One of the areas in which South Asia cooperation has enhanced is energy. One of the areas. And I often give the example when we had the notorious or famous blockage between Nepal and India, power was flowing. And I used to interact with Mr. Chatri, who used to be the energy secretary then, every day, and to see whether power flow is regular or not. So I think on energy, our cooperation is very mature. In the last 10 years, it has further sort of strengthened. And this process is helping us to try to find out solutions to various issues that arise. I have tried to hint at some of the issues insofar as Nepal is concerned. I am a friend of Nepal. I have been associated with the sector, energy sector of Nepal, as I said, for the last 20 years in various capacity. I would definitely see in Nepal, consumption and demand should increase. Nepal should pick up from less than 300 per capita electricity consumption to a higher level. It should go from 400, 500, 1,000. And therefore, first priority is to provide electricity in Nepal. But Nepal has huge potential and it should earn revenue like Bhutan is doing. And Bhutan per capita GDP is better than India. So then it should supply to India, it should supply to Bangladesh. Ultimately, it should supply also to Sri Lanka. In so doing, whatever comes in the way, I may tell you that I have a good understanding of what is the thinking within Indian system, and therefore Indian system is quite alive to this, and they are always very proactive in trying to resolve some of the procedural issues. Procedural issues keep coming. I mean, we have a government system, therefore procedural issues will keep coming. But what is important is that there is a positive approach to evolving this. The Power Secretary of India, the Foreign Secretary of India, they all feel energy cooperation should enhance in the South Asia. So with these words, I have all the best wishes. I think opportunities are huge. Potential is also huge. and situations are favorable. And therefore, if we do not succeed, it would be a pity that we did not succeed. Thanks a lot. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shahi, for your guidance, the words of experience. Thank you so much for joining us. We are truly honored to have you as the keynote speaker for the first ever Power Market Summit Nepal 2022. Thank you so much, sir.